Joining us now, Congressman Darrell Issa from House Judiciary, along with Forbes Media Chair and Editor-in-Chief Steve Forbes. Steve, let's take this to you. Okay, you heard what the president was saying. There's major discontent with elected officials, Steve. We're seeing the number of attempted recalls more than doubling since 2019. When you heard the president talking about inflation, what was your reaction?
Still in a bubble, still feeling that if you shout loud enough, try to paint a rosy picture enough, people will fall for it. People won't fall for it because they go shopping, they buy gasoline, they see what's happening, and they also have the feeling, a rightful feeling, that this government and the Federal Reserve are at loose ends. They really don't know what to do. They're in uncharted waters, and it shows by what they're saying and doing and not doing.
You know, let's take it back to Representative Congressman Darrell Issa. You heard what Steve was saying, Congressman. You know, crime, inflation, it's really driving voters in primaries in 5 states today: Maine, Nevada, North Dakota, South Carolina, also Texas. Congressman, people don't feel safe. They don't like the mayhem. So why did it take so long to deliver legislation to increase protection for Supreme Court justices at their homes?
Because it was about politics and Nancy Pelosi and AOC. I think maybe the elections in San Francisco began to be a signal to even Nancy Pelosi that law and order, enforcement of the law, all are starting to matter to voters, including Democrat voters in droves. And obviously the swing voters are coming to the Republican Party. But, you know, look, Steve said something that I agree with almost 100%, which is uncharted waters. But in some ways, in the 70s under Jimmy Carter, we've seen a lot of this. What's different now is we've got a broken supply chain that can be fixed in addition to runaway inflation and the beginning of a real recession.
You know, to the congressman's point, Steve, President Biden, he's been losing his base. You know, Quinnipiac sees a drop in approval among Hispanics, women, millennials, Democrats overall. He's underwater in 48 states in a new civics poll. He's so far underwater, he needs scuba gear to get out. We've said that time and again. Steve, the president, again, trying a new tack. He's now trying to yell his way into better poll numbers. Watch this.
100 million people have pre-existing conditions. The only reason the insurance company has to cover it is because of that law. By the way, Republicans like to portray me as some kind of big spender. We have spent a lot of money. This year, by the end of the fiscal year, we will have cut the federal deficit by another $1.6 trillion in 1 year. So when they come to you and talk about big spenders, let them know. I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives. So I have a plan to bring down the cost of gas and food. It's going to take time, but let the world coordinate the largest release, what I've been able to do, the largest release of oil from the global fund in history, 1 million barrels a day.
Okay, first, your reaction, Steve. First of all, it's the strategic reserves. It's not the global fund. And what lives has he changed? Mortgage rates now triple since 2020. And, Steve, the poor and the middle class, they're spending an extra $6,000 this year to buy the same stuff they bought last year because of inflation.
Well, you see the president yelling like that and trying to be full of energy, trying to show that he's fully in charge. Well, if he's fully in charge, why isn't he delivering the goods? And in terms of the great recovery he's talking about, we're still almost 1 million jobs short of the pre-pandemic employment picture. The economy is visibly slowing down now. It was negative in the first quarter, maybe barely positive in the second quarter. And for most people, they feel they're in a recession already because their incomes are being outpaced by rising prices. So when he makes that kind of talk, people are wondering, what planet is he on? And people are going to react. And then you have the Federal Reserve, Liz, who think the way you conquer inflation is by slowing the economy down. They're heading us for a recession because they believe that only by a recession can they cure inflation. How about just stabilizing the value of the dollar? Right. But that they won't do.
Yeah, that's a great point Steve just made. And, you know, Congressman, this is what the president's now talking about. He's talking about that he's claiming he's bringing down the deficit. He's wrong. The $2.8 trillion deficit is still the second largest in U.S. history. It's going down because massive temporary pandemic spending is expiring. Pandemic spending tripled the deficit to about $3 trillion or more. The $1.5 trillion that Biden is citing is a projection. It's only $360 billion lower. It's way less than what the CBO had projected by this time. The deficit is still bigger under the Biden White House than if Biden and Congress didn't do anything and sat on their hands.
Well, you're exactly right. The permanent deficit is here, and it's here to stay unless we increase productivity and prosperity. And, when he talks about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that's spending your savings thinking that, in fact, it's income. Income is new oil coming out of the ground. It's not what was saved up under the last administration being sent out. And, it won't last. And he knows it. And it also, by the way, didn't bring down the price of oil because oil is based on future. And the future is not bright unless we get not just asking Saudi Arabia to produce, but we get back to producing that surplus we can produce. And by the way, until we start producing natural gas, you'll see those German and other countries turning back on their coal usage. And that, in fact, is bad for the environment in many, many ways, including not just climate change, but coal is a fairly dirty energy. We have a cleaner energy. We used to export it. We're not exporting more of it until he allows that. And shutting down federal lands and not granting permits, which he has done by executive order, that's what is causing the future market to keep going higher. And that means higher prices for everybody, not just now, but in the future.
I'll tell you, Steve, I mean, Biden is going to be 86 if he wins another term. He's up against a more dynamic, younger, it potentially could be Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, or we're talking maybe, Tom Cotton or Mike Pence, so he's been around since the Nixon era. His policy shop has been empty. He had not much of a track record, and we thought he was going to unify the country. Boy, he really threw a fastball by everybody on that.
Well, he did, and that's one thing that people are angry about him, is that he made no attempt to go and reach out to the Republicans. It was my way or the highway. And even when it comes to building highways, he's put in restrictions, new rules that makes it more difficult to get approval for these bridges and highways and infrastructure products. So people don't like that kind of non-delivery.
All right. Congressman Darrell Issa, Steve Forbes, great interview. Thank you so much.